Hello and welcome dear learners to the NPTEL course on Nutrition Epidemiology, a way towards a healthy life. In the Module 2 Study Designs and Epidemiological Methods for the Chapter 13, we will be discussing on prospective cohort studies in nutrition. So what are the prospective cohort studies? What are the study designs, the types, the prospective versus retrospective cohort studies. Exposure measurement at the baseline, the follow-ups will be discussed. Incidence and relative risk, repeated dietary measurements, the nutrition specific challenges for long follow-up and loss to follow-up, and the multiple outcome analysis and whole lot of strength and weaknesses of a prospective cohort study will be discussed. If I have to come up actually with the prospective cohort studies in nutrition, we need to understand how it is a diet disease established over a period of time in terms of the relationship will be understand. The questionnaires that we put with respect to the participants' classification by a dietary exposure of consumption of food with vegetarian food or non-vegetarian food or a follow-up over a period of time in terms of understanding the major outcomes, dealing with the disease condition like obesity, diabetes and cardiovascular condition and so lot of. So the perspective of taking the importance of cohort studies is very important in nutritional sciences. Let me take you to the steps into the study design. As we understand, the cohort selection initially in a healthy individual comes very important when you are taking the outcome of the interest free. A larger group of population than with the exposure measurement, whether it is a complete diet which is taking a mix of whole from veggies to the whole lot of inclusion of non-vegetarian and cereals versus to the sprouts and the protein rich all components versus to a fast and a fatty spices or even nutritionally less food, fast food. The assessment is being taken with respect to the dietary patterns, nutritional intakes over a period of time of a follow-up to over time, a years or a decades with a follow-up checkups, outcome event identification, where you will get the dietary classification, higher intake, higher diet pattern of unhealthy food versus to low intake of unhealthy diet pattern gives you more disease condition. So there is a temporal set of relationship which develops with the outcome where you are disease free when you are with your healthy habits, where you are reduced risk because of nature contact, where you are exposure towards more healthy food eating, you are more with the lesser disease condition. When you time that the assessment of the exposure is more in terms of purity of the information which comes with lot of follow-up checkups, outcome events identification and comparison of incidences. But the development of outcomes takes in terms of obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases with respect to the lifestyle and the dietary changes and the stress factors which are fueling to give reasons like how there are the different steps in the study designs which identifies the fate of any assessment. Now, we'll try to understand with the prospective cohort study. When a temporal flow of past to future is being given over here, which stated for the now baseline, where the healthy cohort as we started to state in the previous studies and defining the cohort where identifying a healthy individual. Now with the baseline, yes, measure of diet, lifestyle and biomarkers are playing very important role, and the newer which is coming and emphasis is with the biomarkers. The future follow-ups with years and decade is more like a follow-up for a period, and the outcome assessment is based to give you the risks which are calculated, and the prospective is to a minimal recall bias, good data collect and establishing a temporal sequence. The prospective cohort looking towards ahead of the future. What are the common variants of prospective cohort study in nutrition? Where a single exposure cohort, suppose definingly actually there is a cohort which is healthy at a baseline focused on one exposure, you are giving a red meat intake to the person, you are taking the follow for years, the outcome will be like a development of a cancer, heart disease or even a fatty liver. Now, there is a narrow focus of deep assessment of a specific factor which is giving a single exposure cohort, and it becomes very important to go with such a type of prospective cohort study. Now there is a whole diet cohort which we will be understanding, where it is a defining a cohort which is healthy and a baseline analysis of dietary pattern of scores. Example, whether it is good to have a Mediterranean diet or to have a score with a dash diet of division of different food, or example of healthy eating index which is a mix of all, or you can say a balanced diet. The follow-up is also being taken same like the single exposure cohort. It is also taken for years, and the outcome assessment will be like the multiple parallel outcomes like CVD, obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases. In the comprehensive assessment of the overall diet quality, multiple health outcomes, which makes more reasons for us to take the whole diet cohort. Now a life course cohort, which is also very important and becoming very gaining in popularity in defining define the cohort first, then you take a disease condition, or even for a life course, for example childhood, pregnancy, teenage, adolescence. Example, children of 1997, childhood exposure with breastfeeding or early diet, and they got a good growth and adulthood. In the later life, exposures and outcomes as connect to different stages, the critical windows examining the link between the early life and the adult health, where you can identify how they are being seen with exposure to the exclusive breastfeeding or early diets, or giving importance more on the milk products or even proteins have linked with their disease condition into their adult life. What are the prospective versus retrospective cohorts being said in terms of differentiating? Where we find in terms of the prospective study, the direction is forward in terms start before disease, where in the retrospective it is the backward in time, you are taking the previous data. The recall bias here is like low data collection before illnesses, and in the retrospective part it is like the subjects must remember past diet and they should give you the more perfect information about that, where it is the recall bias is very high, and in the prospective study the recall bias is very low. The efficiency wise, the prospective study are slow and expensive, and that becomes the major limitation for this. The retrospective study are more faster and cheaper. Data collection or data control is very high because the researcher chooses measurement, and for the retrospective study low because reliant on the pre-existing record, which gives major reasons even for the rejections of these studies. Now for the exposure measurement at the baseline and the follow. Exposure measurement for the baseline gives like food frequency questionnaire, 24-hour dietary recall, food diaries and biomarkers plays a reason that baseline measurements are coming as something as a good choice, versus to follow-up measurements also come up with healthcare institutions or hospitals where repeated dietary assessment, tracking changes in diet and over a period of time are making healthcare institutions more to take it on a yearly or regular basis, which are improving the accuracy and reducing the misclassification which is there more into the nutritional research. Now the incidence and relative risk, how to calculate it. Incidence, we understand number of new cases of disease during the follow-up, and the number of disease new cases coming give you more reasons of understanding the incidence of the disease. Relative risk, which is very important, where it is denoted with RR, the ratio of the probability of an outcome in an exposed group to the probability of an outcome in an unexposed group. Suppose you are trying to understand with the formula that what is the relative risk incidence in the exposed group, okay, where there is an exposed group like who are more exposed with the pollution, where the incidence in the unexposed group who are not exposed with the pollution. So incidence in the exposed group, particularly of pollution, divided by incidence in an unexposed group who are not faced with the pollution. What is the interpretation? RR is equal to 1 is there is no association, which is giving a reasons for us, and lesser than is like increased risk, and when it is higher it is a protective effect where you are trying to take that key how you can reduce it. So relative risk is very important to understand when you are trying to go with the incidences of the newer cases in terms of a disease condition, like we are discussing the example of lung cancer with an pollution increase or exposed group and unexposed group. What are the repeated dietary measurements? Repeated dietary measurements are connected with the assessment that are very crucial in nutrition studies due to changing dietary habits. Okay, and repeated measurements allow researcher to calculate the cumulative average intake, which reduces the random measurement error, which is very common. What are the advantages of dietary measurements? Captures long-term dietary patterns, reduces measurement error, it improves the validity of the exposure assessment. What are the methods to take it, like periodic FFQs, the digital diet tracking tools, which is now gaining more importance, and the biomarkers reassessment, which is also sometimes to be seen as costly but very effective to go with the dietary measurements, and in healthcare institution it is growing more importance. The approaches are recalibrated models and time varying covariates, actually, which gives us the reason to take ahead this. Now the nutrition specific challenges. What are the challenges to be seen as the long follow-up periods like years and decades? Chronic diseases, as you see, takes decades to develop, sometimes years and even decades. Maintaining the funding and participant engaged over the decade is resource intensive and challenging, and sometimes the long follow-up periods are sometimes taking too big limitations. Staying population and migrant or lost or dropout or non-connected. So participants may move, sometimes they may lose the interest or die, or they introduce bias if dropout differs systematically from those who remain out. The measurement errors may come in the diet assessment, as if like inaccurate self-reporting, the recall bias, where the social disability can lead to misclassification of dietary intake discussed earlier, where your diet exposure and diet disease outcome are correlated. So confounding like lifestyle factors associated with both diet and disease, like smokers may eat less healthy and have higher disease risks, distorts the two relationship. Sometimes it might become with the food frequency questionnaire very prominently being seen as a measurement error. The multiple outcome analysis, actually, in nutrition prospective cohort study, where your baseline cohort individually of a single dietary exposure, where your baseline cohort individual healthy individual outcome free, where your single dietary exposure, where Mediterranean style or dash diet or dietary patterns can give you more reasons for taking it ahead. Follow-up periods are being seen as a repeated assessment, where there are sometimes repeated assessment which are done in periods and years for a long period. Now we will see four conditions: cardiovascular diseases first as CVD, reduce risk and reduce disease risk free. So exposure to low intake of fast food, salt, or even red meat, and even you find fried, or increased risk are developed when you are taking a single exposure which are linked to heart attack or stroke. Type 2 diabetes, which has a very reason for you to understand, where your high intake will give you more reasons of blood sugar increasement, insulin pump risk actually, and low intake like your glucose test strips, artery, damaged artery. So increased risk of development of CVD. The cancer, high intake gives you normal cells, reduced risk, low intakes like increase the risk of development of CVD. So single exposure linked to various cancer risk. Bone health, high intake where the reduced risk and low intake increased risk develop of CVD. So summary, one exposure, many health answers. Advantage, assessment of overall impact and the advantages like simultaneous analysis of distinct condition. Also, it is advantageous to take the determine the different relative values, where your temporal relationship of diet precedes assessment, where you have to understand like how your exposure or low intake or your reduced risk and high intake gives you major reasons for your nutrition prospective cohort studies. In terms of understanding the strength and weaknesses of the prospective cohort study, the strength are establishes a temporal relationship, can study multiple outcomes which gives you more reasons to take ahead this, reduces recall bias and suitable for rare exposures and disease condition. The weaknesses are expensive and time consuming, That's the reasons where we find that there is a loss to follow up, and where we find that because of even expensiveness and even other reasons to add it is like measurement errors in the diet, and not ideal for rare diseases, which gives more chances of rejecting this. Now we are discussing few case studies which are landmark case studies in nutrition epidemiology with respect to the prospective cohort studies. Nurses Health Study in 1976, key findings of this case study which made it more reasons for us even to discuss now, it is like the found association between fat intake and heart disease, where there was a more reasons of taking more fats, it is linked to heart disease. Long-term dietary patterns and chronic diseases, and the study made a major reasons that how it is with the occupational that your food intake and your association of disease was seen. A very epic study which is given from multiple countries, and where there is a reason of diet, nutrition, lifestyle and environmental factors which are very closely linked. The major goal was to examine diet and cancer risk, which has been proven to see in that how diet is connected to nutrition, your lifestyle and environmental factors, which gives you major reasons actually to come up actually and to make it more to understand the EPIC study. There is very important one more study, that is fragment heart study, which is giving you more reasons that to understand this study, which is from 1948. In the present times, it is also very important, where the key contribution of this study were the identified dietary and lifestyle risk factors for cardiovascular disease. How it is being seen, where there is a reasons of cholesterol, blood pressure, smoking, diet and lifestyle pattern which are giving you more reasons where the heart disease and the increase in heart disease is being linked to this. Again, the 7 country studies, which is more of defining and understanding the different dietary patterns: Mediterranean food, Japanese food, Dash food, Northeastern European food, Asian food. The foundational study linked saturated fat intake to coronary heart disease across different cultures. Particularly, the study is more concentrating towards the 7 country studies and their diet patterns which are being taken over there for the 3 diet patterns: Mediterranean, Japanese and North European. There are many other diet patterns also. The international cultural diets, which makes a reason like how the international perspectives and the cultural diets are making us a reason to increase in terms of the saturated fat intakes. The saturated fat intakes are giving a reasons for increasing the heart disease conditions. And the fifth and very important study is the Hong Kong children study of 1997 of birth cohort. What is this study coming as? It is more with the CHD mortality, where the life course perspective is more with the birth cohort tracking in the early life diet and the later growth in their adolescence. In the challenges and the pediatric nutrition epidemiology, it has given a lot of contribution, and the development origin is connected with their childhood, where how they were being fed with respect to their diet, changes, nurturing and nutritional exposure. The present illnesses are connected with your previous childhood interests. The Hong Kong children of 1997 birth cohort becomes a very important study actually to discuss in nutritional epidemiology, especially pediatric. Now with this we come an end to this chapter, where the prospective cohort studies were being seen observing as healthy individuals and as forward in the time measuring diet before the disease onset. And it is very important to give you the benefits of that these studies pay more important into the nutritional programs. They allow estimation of incidence and the relative risk and are well suited for whole diet and pattern based analysis. This has proved very remarkable and very important in terms of contributing the recommendations for the cardiovascular disease and even diabetes. Repeated dietary measures and careful handling of loss to follow-up are critical to validity and gives us the strength for conducting such as the research. Despite the strength, they remain observational. Diet measurement error and residual confounding limits the causal claims. So there are more flaws, more benefits, and there are even sometimes an observational patterns. So it is up to you, like how it comes with respect to the objectives that you are taking for your research study to conduct the research. With this, we come an end to this chapter. These are few very important readings that are being added for the chapters to make you more clear when you are going to the depth of the different patterns that you are able to understand for your research study designs, whether it is for the nutrition research designs to study in different way or epidemiological and clinical studies of the nutrition to be discussed. So thank you for your patience listening. Thank you very much.